take a moment to thank our sponsor, CatchMark Technologies. If you're looking for technical support, structured cabling, cybersecurity, or digital marketing, they're your go-to team. With tons of experience, they will guide you through all of your technical problems. Reach out to them at catchmarkit.com. All right, welcome to episode number 2 of the spring season of the Benchwarmers Perspective. Today I'm here with Ron Smolen. That's how you say it, correct?
That is how you say it.
Awesome, perfect. Tell me a little bit about your background. Explain a little bit of who you are for the people who don't know, and then we'll hop on into the meat and potatoes of this episode.
So I'm Ron Smolen. I am a Whitehall resident. I've been here since 1978. Um, I am I guess, how would I explain it? I am someone who's passionate about all sports, including baseball. Um, so that's what I kind of do. I live in the area along with my wife. I've got 3 children. And I'm a pharmacist professionally. That's what I do for work wise, but I also follow baseball and do lots of things with baseball along with other things.
Yeah. So tell me how you kind of got started in baseball, and kind of your background in it.
So, baseball wise, I grew up with 3 brothers, or actually 3 brothers and 3 sisters, and they are older than me, so we did quite a bit of baseball, as a kid, and had a wiffle ball field back in Belleville, Michigan. If you guys know where Belleville's at, Bryce, the University of Michigan quarterback, also is from Belleville, so that's something that may ring a bell. But we had a wiffle ball field, and that's how I learned how to play baseball. Actually, I learned how to hit a curveball. We had actually lights set up on that wiffle ball field with some lamps and some aluminum foil, and we actually had lights and played at night and stuff. And Little League baseball all through then, and moved up here to Whitehall back in 1978 and played Pony League, and we used to. That's called juniors now, and played. High school with under John Heisinger, the field that's called over there in Whitehall now, the JV field. And then played quite a bit through there, and played some at Mesquite Community College. And as a player, that's what I did. And I also have some other things that kind of get into a little bit more than what I do now with baseball, and what I've done kind of in the past with local baseball kids, with coaching, umpiring. We had other things that I can kind of get a little bit deeper into as we start talking, Connor.
Yeah, definitely. So great introduction there. Kind of explain to me a little bit of what you're doing now. As you mentioned, I know as you said, you're umpiring a little bit, and you've coached a little bit. But what has that looked like over the last since kind of your playing career ended?
So that's a great question. As many of us do, we all actually have to hang them up. Whether you hang them up at age 12, the spikes, or you hang them up at age 18 or 24. Or guys in the MLB will hang them up at age 40. But a lot of times people hang them up, then you start having a family, and then all of a sudden, if you're lucky, whether you have a girl, you play they play softball, or if you have a boy and he plays baseball, then all of a sudden it got rekindled again. So I have one son that started playing baseball, and it started with watching baseball. Before school, we'd watch baseball, and all of a sudden he really liked it, and it started rekindling my passion to be a part of baseball. And so I started coaching with that, and then since then, you know, um, I've been able to be for him. He was able to play at Whitehall, then he's going on to play. He plays college baseball, and which interesting enough with that, the last couple of years, they've had live streaming going on, and no play-by-play, and I've been able to do the play-by-play for his college. And my cat, of course, is going to jump up, like I told you. This is Oliver. We'll kind of pull him on over. I thought I would try to be able to keep him not
Yeah.
jumping up, but I think he's getting the hint that I don't really want him to come on. But I've been able to do the play-by-play for the college team for the last couple of years, and been probably have gotten 60, 70 games play-by-play. Um, Along with the local game here, the Whitehall Montague game, I was able to do that game. So passion-wise, it's really been a lot of fun. And the background behind that is for folks that I don't know if you remember, Connor, but growing up as a kid, we used to listen to Ernie Harwell on AM radio,
Mhm.
and uh, I was able to think about that and pick up from that. So a lot of what I do, whether it be just listening to that and how to call the game, I got picked up from Ernie Harwell.
At this moment, we would like to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Greenridge Realty, looking to buy, sell, or finance property in West Michigan? Look no further. Chris Dykman and Sarah Real, the trusted names in West Michigan real estate, are here to guide you every step of the way. With years of experience and deep understanding of the local market, they make your real estate dreams a reality. Visit Greenridge Realty at 323 East Colby Street, Whitehall, and let the experts take care of you. Ready to make your move? Contact Greenridge Realty today.
So I'm able to again take some of those skills and being able to transfer over that to calling some
Yeah.
play-by-play. So
How important is are those live streams and that coverage to the community? I mean, I know it's huge around here, but how important do you think it is?
well, so when I was a fan, and unable to go because a lot of these games are, all over, whether it be Indiana, Ohio, and a lot of the parents that are on the team are from, California, Western Canada. We actually have a kid on the team who's from the Netherlands, Louisiana. So the live stream a lot of times are just there, and a lot of times you don't even have the score on there. So um, and I would be watching it myself, and I'm not really sure what's going on. So, being part of the play-by-play, it's a little bit better to have actually know what's going on with the action. And so I've gotten feedback that people really appreciate the live stream, and one, it helps you kind of understand the game a little bit. And what's a lot of fun for me to do it is I'm able to bring a different perspective maybe than maybe some others, but just for me as being a former player, an umpire, and also someone who's done some coaching, it's just a whole different perspective and with a little bit of sense of humor
Yeah.
that I know, Connor, you heard a little bit of the live stream
Yep.
from the Whitehall Montague game, but I try to bring a sense of humor because it's a lot of dead air you have to fill,
Yep.
and it's different than basketball or football. And so I think I try to make it informative along with a smile here or there.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Something you keep mentioning is the umpiring. How did you get into that, and what does that look like over? How has that changed and evolved over the last few years?
So umpiring, what I'll make one mention is that umpiring is not for everybody.
Mhm.
Uh, and back and again, I was part of White Lake Little League, the board and with some people that not many people know, like with Jeff Moss, who's the head coach for Montague, and Randy Michelson, who's the head coach for Montague softball. And a lot of times, we just don't have enough. We didn't have enough umpires, and a lot of times we have kid umpires. So I started umpiring. I started actually umpiring when I was 19, 18 or 19, when I just got done playing college baseball, and I liked that. You made really good money in the summer. But then again, I took some time off because I was going to college and I just didn't get into it. But then I got into it again in White Lake Little League. And, I enjoyed that part of the game. If you're not playing, if you're not a player, it's an ability to be back on the field and be a part of the game without playing.
Right.
And then I started, and I umped one game, an all-star game with a former teammate.
At this moment, we would like to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Park Place Sports. Want to support your local athletics program? Look no further than Park Place Sports. As a leader in banner and sponsorship program for athletes, they provide top-notch services to help your team shine. Visit their Facebook page, Park Place Sports LLC, and see how they can elevate your athletic program today. Park Place Sports, your partner in athletic excellence.
Tim Shupe, who many of you guys know, he played at Reese Buffer, and then he played at MCC with me, and then played at Grand Valley. And Tim said, "Hey, why don't you start doing high school umpiring?" And I'm like, maybe not. And he's like, "Yeah, it'll be fun. Him and I will do it." And so, sure enough, about 4 years ago, I decided to get back into high school umpiring, and it has been interesting. So
Yeah.
it's been a fun part of doing that.
Yeah. How has the game kind of changed and evolved? I know that travel leagues are a big thing now when they weren't as necessarily a big thing. Probably when you were coming up, it was mostly little league. How has that changed? What do you how do you think that that's affected the game um, recently?
So travel baseball has really affected the game, in a good way and a bad way. I think in a good way is the competition. I was able to coach part of travel for multiple years, and it is an ability for kids to play on the weekends, to play higher competition in travel, and I can just vouch for my son. He enjoyed it. Playing with other players, not just people from his area, um, and able to play higher competition and be seen by other coaches and stuff if that's what you want to do, if you want to recruit. The downside that I think from travel a little bit is that we see more injuries, especially with
Yep.
pitchers. So people don't have time off. Kids will play on multiple teams, and the coaches aren't communicating. And if you're a really good pitcher, people, just pitching in general, if we're talking about pitchers, you end up being on multiple teams. You don't have the pitch counts because in travel ball, they don't have pitch counts. Some younger travel tournaments will say only so many innings.
Yep.
But I think injuries are an issue. Also, what I noticed with travel, there's less practice sometimes. So kids that go to the collegiate level, and talking to some of the coaches is that they don't really have the fundamentals. They have to teach a lot of the fundamentals in some kids, so they don't have as much practice time. Um, so again, it's helped and it's hurt, and that's also hurt kind of the recreational leagues. When I was part of White Lake Little League, I mean, we had numerous amount of kids and teams. It was probably, I can't say it was the greatest amount of kids that we had, but if you were asked Randy or Jeff or Mike and Chris Ritchie, some of these guys, I mean, we were just very proud. White Lake Little League was like had the most kids compared to all the other kids around, all the other teams around. And now, you'll see it. I'm gonna say they're struggling, but you're lucky to get 4 teams, where we had like 8 or 9 teams. So um, that's the other downside. I have the love for White Lake Little League because it's did so much for me and for my family, but that's the ups and downs.
Yeah. Do you think that that transition away from little league has been greater and greater throughout the years?
Yeah, you see it. You see it. It's a struggle. It's a struggle to get the kids to go out, because if you look at the baseball, you would say the baseball obviously is not as good with recreational, leagues as it is in travel baseball. So kids don't want to play, they want to play in the better, leagues. So then a lot of times, but that's where a lot of times you get a lot more swings and you get a lot of opportunity. If you struggle, 'cause kids take time to develop. Not all kids develop at the same rate. And a lot of times you'll see a kid that is really good is 11, 10 or 11-year-old, but then they're
At this moment, we'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Chris Wank, Century 21 First Class Realty. Looking to sell or purchase a new home? Or perhaps invest in a plot of land? Chris Wank with Century 21 First Class Realty is your go to expert. As a leader in West Michigan real estate, Chris brings unparalleled knowledge and dedication to every transaction. Don't wait. Call Chris Wank today at 616 414 5420 and take the first step towards your real estate dreams. Century 21 First Class Realty, your trusted partner in West Michigan property.
not as good, then they kind of phase out a little bit. But then there's a kid who's maybe not as good at 10 or 11, and they develop at a different level. And when you're at a recreational league, you have an opportunity to kind of the
Yep.
kid who doesn't do as well has an opportunity at the recreational league. So
Yeah. How do you think White Lake Little League or little leagues in general evolve to be able to kind of maintain themselves through the changes with travel leagues?
so I think what I've noticed in the last couple of years is they're really good at, like, the social media does help, you
Hmm.
know, and travel leagues are expensive. some of them, are very expensive. They're over $1,000 a year, and then, the commitment, is a lot during the summer. I mean, it's like every weekend or every other weekend. I mean, you've got to travel. They call it travel league for a reason, and sometimes people don't really want to give up all their summers playing that much baseball. With White Lake Rivals that we used to have before it's defunct, we had a couple of goals, and this is in the past, but we had a couple goals to be done with our travel season by July 1st because we wanted people to have family time because a lot of our kids played football. So we didn't want it to be like all the way through and then families not having time to have family time. So it
Yep.
was really important to kind of have enough travel, tournaments, but also have family time. And then I think with travel leagues, people don't take that in consideration.
Do you think people are more and more willing to travel for those travel leagues? If they have to
Oh,
go to Ohio, do you think they're more likely to go to Ohio now than they were 5, 6 years ago?
oh, definitely. I mean, I'm not going to discount travel leagues because I know I've got friends who played in them, and did, really well, and they had a really good travel club, and there's a really family orientation, of that group that goes together and they love, and it's expensive and they do it, and some went to like, Iowa and Nebraska, and they went to like the Little League, or they went to Hall of Fame. Uh, over there in like New York and did a lot of that stuff. And it's people really love all that stuff. And I think that's great. Um, but it's not for everybody,
Hmm.
but again, I'm not going to discount those folks that want to do that. But if you want to do like other things like with football, or if you want to have a summer, I mean, I think there is a mix, but you've got to be ready to do all those type of things.
Yeah, yeah. So kind of looking back at your umpiring career, how has the game changed and how have the athletes changed as you've been doing that?
So now it's just interesting now and those are all really good questions. So the athletes definitely, compared to when I was playing, obviously electronics, it's funny to see. I mean, you can now, coaches can relay the signs in via an earpiece, which before, coaches gave signs, like here, they go here and here through the here, and that's we used to do all that type of stuff, which some coaches still do that, but now you can do it through an earpiece. So electronics are a part of that. The other part is that the kids are bigger. The kids are bigger. They take care of themselves a little bit better. I mean, they're more into weightlifting. When I was growing up, weightlifting was really more for about football, and some kids still did that. But back when I was playing, we used to have the black and green Easton bats. There was no BB core. BB core is a bat, that it is adjusted so the ball doesn't come off the bat as fast,
Hmm.
because the kids are faster. So the exit velos or exit velocities, what we call them, probably are not the same as than when I was a kid growing up, just because of the ball, and the
Quick break from the action to thank our sponsor. Meraki Performance is a leader in performance coaching. Whether you're looking to motivate your business or your athletic team, Meraki Performance can help. Check them out at merakiperform.com.
pitchers, throwing harder because, they're a little bit bigger. Now, some of those folks back in my area say we threw just as hard as the kids throw now, but I think it's fair to say if you look at the MLBs, people average a lot of those starters are throwing in the upper 90s, and some of them even throwing 100. So just people are bigger, kids are
Yeah,
bigger.
yeah. Have you seen kind of? I know I coach through in the winter, and I feel like something I've seen a lot more of recently is just in specifically basketball, and I don't know how this would necessarily translate to baseball. A little bit more willingness or less willingness to be vocal, if that makes sense. So less willingness to say to be a leader on the team and be to say, "Hey, go here, go here, go here." I see less and less of that. Do you feel like you see that more in baseball now?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I think a lot of times you'll still get, I think, as you probably admit, you'll still get kids that will be that way, but they're waiting for more the direction from the coach, you know. And I'll give you another example, in baseball, that leadership piece. is, when I was growing up, and I caught for many years as a catcher. So in catcher, a lot of times, we have, the catcher calls the pitches, and a lot of times, growing up, the catcher called the game. The catcher called fastball, second pitch, you curveball, fastball. A lot of times as a catcher, you get that by looking at the hitter and what the hitter did the last time at bat or how his swing is. And that is very rare today. You'll see that, especially in the college game. You don't see it. The coaches call the pitches. Even in high school, the coaches call the pitches. And that's back to kind of your example of how the games change, where the coaches do most all of that and they don't let the kids be involved as much. And same thing with vocally. You don't have as kids being as vocal. But in the high school game, it's very interesting too, is now, even as an umpire, they don't really a whole lot of they want to make sure there's not much taunting going on. So they really, for us, they don't want any taunting going on, and they don't want a lot of that mixing up with that. In the college game, it's a little bit different, which
Yeah.
I enjoy calling because that makes the game fun when you hear
Yeah.
going back between both dugouts, and the language is a little spicier, which is a
Yep.
lot more fun, and it makes
Yeah.
you
So
going.
that kind of leads me into two questions. First of those being, do you feel like not allowing catchers or whoever to call the pitches and having the coach do a lot of that, do you think that hurts players throughout their upbringing throughout the game? Do you think that hurts their understanding of the game?
Um, I don't know if it hurts the understanding of the game, but what it hurts is so when you're a player when you're playing on the field, or when you're a pitcher. Again, I wasn't a pitcher, but I was a catcher. There's a certain feel that, when you're on the field, if something's working for you or something's not working for you, it's very static when the coach is calling this or that. Now, coach can see some things, obviously, and
Yep.
there's no denying that a coach has, let's say, 40 years or 30 years or 20 years of experience versus a kid that has, you know, uh, a, 10 years or 5 years or even 16 years. But if something's working for somebody, they know it, or if a catcher can see something, if they have that ability. Now, not every catcher has that ability, depending on what level they're at, if they're 10, 12, 14 versus 22. Um, but I think it does take something a little away on that development piece. And and I think that's somewhat how the game's changed. Um, and it's very interesting. Now, I'll talk a little bit about the college game. Now, the interesting is that in the college game, a lot of the players will have like an Apple Watch. All the player, 9 of them, and the coach will actually call the play or the pitch on the Apple Watch, and you'll see all the players look at their Apple Watch, including the pitcher. Which again,
Yep.
that's how the game has evolved with regards to electronics. And
Yeah.
again, it's being more, different than again how it used to be.
Yeah. And then that kind of leads me into my second question. You mentioned taunting is kind of going by the wayside in the high school game and not as much in the college game. I know the stigma around taunting is it's always bad. It's never helpful. It's usually bad, and a lot of times it is. But at the same time, do you think that trash talk and that kind of that um, taunting and things like that? Do you think that um, kind of, how do I say this? Makes the game a little bit more entertaining to watch and makes it a little bit more um, like there's a little bit more of a grit and grind feel to it when you're talking trash. There's something to back up. You play with a little bit of a chip on your shoulder. Do you feel like that's not there as much when somebody's not talking trash or there's not as much taunting?
I know exactly what you're talking about,
Yeah.
because you know, um, it makes the game more sterile. That's the word
Hmm.
you're talking about. It makes it more sterile. Um, and there's two sides to that. So the two sides of it, as an umpire, you know, as an umpire, the game can somewhat get out of control, especially if the coaches get involved. It gets a little bit nastier, it gets a little bit dirtier. People may do something physical, when the taunting gets out of control. Because what happens is emotions get involved. So then maybe someone runs into somebody or runs somebody over because emotionally they're getting irritated. Um, so that is the reason behind all that.
So
Now,
real quickly, I want to
yeah,
I want to stop and ask you a question.
yeah.
Um, do you feel like that sometimes is a lesson that could be learned in that situation?
Well, yeah, I mean, the game, all athletic games are life learning. You
Yep.
know, the game of baseball, and I'll go back to your question. The game of baseball is a game of failure. You know, how to deal with a game of failure. If you were successful in the major leagues 1 out of 4 times as a batter, means you fail 3 out of 4 times. You success.
Let's take another moment to thank our sponsor, Shoreline Restoration and Construction. Did a storm recently hit your business, home, or other building? Then Shoreline Restoration and Construction can help. They are a leader in remodels, new construction, and much, much more. They also restore water damaged buildings, flooded basement, and so much more.
So 1 out of 4 times, you are making multiple millions of dollars a year.
Yeah.
So you have to be successful. So, talk back to your taunting piece. If someone is trying to get under your nerves, just like what we're, as adults, what are you going to do in life? If someone's, at work is getting under your nerves, are you going to go off and punch somebody? No, you can't do that. You got to learn to deal with
Yeah.
it. So that's what you have to learn. So we don't really want to do that. So back to your question. Yeah, I mean, it is a life lesson. You got to learn to kind of keep your emotions in check. So, yeah, I mean, it's a good point. Against it's part of that sterility of the game, but I really enjoy. That's why I enjoy calling the high school games because especially I'm pretty close to the game, so you can sometimes it bleeds over to the live stream where you hear people saying fudge, or want to call third strike and
Yeah.
the players arguing with the umpire. I mean, I really enjoy that part of it, and I kind of make up what people are saying, like,
Yep.
and that type of stuff. So,
Yeah, I think one kind of key piece, and I see this through a lot of sports, is um, kind of losing the autonomy of the player, right? So as a high school player, there's less and less of I make my own decision while I'm on the field or on the court or I'm doing this or I'm doing that, and there's a lot more of coach makes the decision and then I follow. And I think that overall hurts athletes more than it helps because, for example, if I'm a basketball player and I'm coaches tell me every single play I'm calling, they're telling me I have to go here, here, and here, and I just always follow that. What happens when I get in the workforce, right? And now I don't have a coach that's every day going to tell me I got to do this, this, and this when I'm in a necessarily a professional workforce. You might sometimes, but a lot of times in the professional workforce, you're not always going to be told what to do. You got to find something to do. You got to find things to get done. You got to go out and look for that. And I think that's where those athletes struggle is now a play they haven't had the training, I guess, or that mentality of I got to figure it out for myself. It's a lot more of ask question, ask question, ask question until I get to a point where this person's just telling me what to do. Whereas in my mind, it should always be like if I'm on the basketball court, I don't want coach telling me what to do because I want to see it, I want to understand it, and I want to be able to call that myself. I want to be able to say, okay, we need to run this play to be able to counter whatever defense they're running, or I need to, if they're running a zone, we got to switch to zone offense type thing. I see less and less of that throughout as we go.
yeah, and I hear what you're saying. I see that more and more. You have your instinctual players that still will do that, but if it's not natural or if you're unable to cultivate that, people will get uncertain, and as a player, as a former player, you know, when you're confident, in those your abilities, you're more likely to make that confident play. And if you're unconfident, if you're unsure, you're more likely to make mistakes, and I think that's what cultivates it. And I think that's where a lot of the practice comes in though, too, the lack of practice that I see sometimes. But yeah, those are all really good things where you kind of see it. But still, those higher range players will still, and that doesn't happen long, but a lot of those higher range players that we get to witness here in the White Lake area, you'll still see those folks make
100%.
those plays. It's those mid-range guys, maybe those guys that haven't developed, that don't have the ability, that are kind of waiting to see what looking over to coach. And I'll give you one example. Just, you'll see that a guy on third. So you got a guy on third, and the ball gets past the catcher. That player has to make an instinctual decision if he should take home base or not. He can't wait really. If he waits for the coach to tell him to go, it could be too late. It's that split decision. And so that's where you've got to have that instinctual decision. And that's where it has to be kind of somewhat natural.
Yeah. I it's funny because I always grew up as, if you ask anybody who knows me, or who has played sports with me, I'm not the best 99% of the time. Thank you to our sponsor, High Performance Carpet and Tile Cleaning. Do you need your home or business carpet or tile refreshed? Looking brand spanking new? Well, these are the guys to do it. With an extensive background in the carpet and tile industry, they will leave your floors looking brand new. Give them a call today at 231-299-9296. But I am almost 100% of the time the most confident person on whatever floor, court, whatever it is, because I'm confident in myself, and as I've coached more and more, it's harder to coach people who are not like me, because it's hard to understand what it's like to not be always confident in yourself when you're on the field or on the floor. And as I've coached, more and more kids I've seen are not confident in their abilities, and I think it's because they don't have like you said, they don't have the fundamentals. They don't understand. In basketball, they can't necessarily dribble with both hands. They might be able to, but they're always going to go back to that right or left hand, whatever that dominant hand is, and they don't have good footwork. Right. One of the things that just kills me, I see a lot, is just poor shooting footwork in basketball. Taking one dribble and going outside in when you're going to the right side, so your right foot plants and then you're going inside foot right. It just kills me, because I was always taught you take one dribble, you swing your inside foot's your pivot foot, and you swing your outside foot around and you get squared up and then you shoot. And I see less and less than that. Now these kids are not confident because they've got poor footwork, and their shooting ability is diminished because of the poor footwork, and they don't even know it necessarily.
Yeah, and I think that, again, that's that confidence piece. And then I appreciate you talking about those things. And then if you can't, you can't really teach it again if you don't know the fundamentals. And I think it goes back to how the game has changed somewhat.
Yeah.
Too many games, not enough practice. And
Yeah.
if you don't have the practice, you won't be able to do well in the games. And I think that's how somewhat the game has changed because of so many games, and the coach can't really practice, can't
Yep.
really practice with you.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I appreciate you coming on. This is an awesome episode. I know it was kind of last minute, so I appreciate you being able to make some time and get on. And I appreciate you covering that game the other day. So thanks for coming on. This is an awesome episode. And we'll go ahead and wrap it up.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to come on, Connor, and hope to work with you more again. Take care.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks. End the recording here.